All right, today I have the great privilege to introduce you all to Mark Schaefer. He's a 9 times best-selling author, speaker, business consultant, and university professor. You probably already know him. He hosts one of the top marketing blogs and podcasts in the world. His latest book, Cumulative Advantage, Mark introduces a formula for how to achieve unstoppable momentum, which I think is what we're all after. With that said, I would love to welcome Mark Schaefer. Thank you for taking the time to chat today.
Hey, Aaron, glad to be here.
Mark, you've been a marketer for over 30 years. What is it about the profession that's made you dedicate yourself to it?
I think there are two things. I actually started out as a journalism major in college, and my junior year, I took a marketing 101 class, and I opened up this book, Principles of Marketing by Dr. Philip Kotler. And he said, marketing is a combination of sociology, psychology, and anthropology. I thought that is the coolest thing ever. I want to do that. And it is really, in many ways, the most human profession. People tend to overlook that because they get obsessed with technology, but it really is about humans and psychology, human behavior. And the second thing that drives me is it's just so darn exciting. It's changing every day. If you like stability, go into accounting or finance. But if you love just a dynamic field that's changing and growing and emerging, I mean, marketing, there's no better place to be. I think it's the most fun and fascinating career you could hope for.
In your book, you introduce the Japanese concept of ikigai, and you say that that's your meaning and purpose in life, what gets you up in the morning. And I was just curious as to what is currently your ikigai?
Well, that's something that I think changes over time and changes through your career, really. I mean, when I was a young guy, what I really needed to achieve was, I wanted a career. I wanted to launch a career. Money was important to me because I wanted security for my family. I wanted to send my kids to school. But now it's more like finding this balance of work that has meaning and work that I enjoy. And if it's also work that people will pay for, that is perfect. And I mean, I'm so grateful that, it hasn't been quick and it hasn't been easy, but I really am in that place. I'm in this wonderful place, Aaron, that, I'm at a point in my career where I can send the elevator back down. I mean, so many people help me, and I can be helpful and generous and share my experiences and nurture people. And every week someone tells me, I changed their life or I changed their business. And I think you'd be a lucky person to hear that one time in your whole life. And I hear it every week. And that's what really keeps me going today.
In addition to your other roles, you're a professor at Rutgers University. And as a teacher, I was wondering if there are any techniques you've developed to help people learn.
Well, it's funny. I'm always learning myself. What I've found, this is good. If you've ever thought about teaching, this is going to surprise a lot of people who have never taught before, but people really like to learn from themselves. And I thought, well, here I am. I'm the teacher. I've got to show everybody how smart I am, fill their brains with all this, this data download. And over time, people would say, well, we wish we had more time for class discussion. So I added more class discussion. And the feedback was, we want class discussion. So I added more class discussion. I don't know if it's a trend that I'm just catching on to, or if it's really a key that's always been there. But people love to have discussions in small groups. They like to have discussions in large groups. And it sort of, I think, also breaks up the pattern of just listening to one person. So one of the things I've learned over time is to keep adding more levels of interaction in the class.
In your recent interview, you mentioned that while you and Tim Ferris published your books around the same time, his career exploded in ways that yours didn't. In fact, you said that there were moments in your career when you could have made more money, but you chose not to because it meant you might lose accessibility or become less accessible. Can you explain that choice?
Well, it was really about, I'm not sure if it was about accessibility. I mean, what you're referring to is I took a big risk in the Cumulative Advantage book and put myself as a character in the book and compared my career to Tim Ferris. And the idea was, 20 years ago, if you compared not 20 years ago, probably 15 years ago, if you compared both of us, where we were in our careers, and you had to place a bet, who would be so successful that they would know Oprah? You'd probably place your bet on me, but it wasn't me. And this idea of how did he create momentum? I created great momentum in my career, but I didn't reach his level. What did he do differently than me? Now, the good news is that Tim has been very transparent about his career. So it's not hard to find these things out. He basically tells about everything he did, everybody he knows, everybody who's helped him, and everything he didn't do. So I was able to sort of place my career and his career and dissect it in the context of the 5 steps of momentum in this book. And we followed each other pretty well lockstep through the first 4 steps. And the 5th step is you've got to be consistent. You've got to keep driving this momentum once you start it. And he certainly did that. He received his big boost with the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, and he turned it into a franchise. He had the 4-Hour Chef. He had the 4-Hour Body. And my first big book was a book called Return on Influence. It was the first book written about influence marketing. And I decided that's all I wanted. I was not interested in being the influence person. I was not interested in creating an influence business or a consultancy. The reason I wrote that book was really out of curiosity, and I was ready to move on to the next subject. The thing that really motivates me is learning new things, which is why I like marketing so much. So I sort of stepped off the path of momentum because I would have been miserable. If I had to think about one thing all day, manage people, no way. I would have been miserable. But that's what I needed to do to keep the momentum going. So I made a life choice. Now, he kept the momentum going. And the interesting thing is, Aaron, here we are about 10 years later, after we sort of took that divergent path, and he's stepping off.
And you mentioned your latest book, Cumulative Advantage. It outlines 5 stages for achieving momentum. So the first stage is the initial advantage. The second stage is finding the seam. The third stage is creating a sonic boom for your work. And the 4th stage is reaching up to other mentors. You mentioned the 5th being constancy. In relation to the first stage, the initial advantage, you quote researcher Franz Johansson, who says, every success starts with a click moment, a collision of people and ideas and circumstances that creates your one small advantage. So how do we make ourselves more available to click moments?
Well, that's a great question, especially now. And I'm glad you asked that question, because I think that's the part of the book that I believe it should give a lot of people hope that you don't need to have an Ivy League education. You don't need $1 million in the bank. You don't need to be connected to, famous relatives and celebrities. That really behind every person, behind every successful business, there's something random. And you just have to be aware of those opportunities and those advantages when they come to you. I can draw a direct line, Aaron, to you inviting me to be on this show with you today, and a random conversation I had with my boss in the early 1990s. I was kind of stuck in my marketing job. I was at a Fortune 100 company. I was trying to figure out what to do. And I was looking around and the internet was beginning. And so I went to my boss and I said, I would like to get an AOL account and I'd like to put it on my expense account. And he thought it was a big waste of money, $9 a month. And but he agreed. And so I became officially the first person at this Fortune 100 company to be on the internet. And a couple of years later, when they were going to create a global e-business department, I was the natural choice to lead it because I had already been experimenting on the internet. So that created an entirely new trajectory for my career. My initial advantage at that time was just something as simple as an idea that nobody else had. I wanted to see if there was a business application on the internet. And that leads us into point 2, because that advantage, that idea or that skill or your location or whatever advantage you have, it has to match up with a shift going on in the world to really create momentum. For me, that shift was the beginning of the internet. So it's not just having an advantage. You have to pursue it. Just having an idea doesn't create anything new. I mean, you had an idea for this podcast. You want to create something valuable and unique, and you're going for it. And hopefully you'll find that shift where people are going to say, we need something like that. And then it'll start to grow. And then your momentum will begin. And that's how it works. Those are the first two steps. And I'd just like to add, the reason that I think this is so important now is the world is changing so fast. And we have more opportunities and shifts because of this pandemic, arguably than any other time in history. And every one of those changes, where we work, how we work, when we work, if we work, how we learn, how we teach, how we relax, how we deal with stress of the pandemic and everything that's going on, how we work out, how we entertain ourselves. Those are all fractures in the status quo that represent opportunities for someone to burst through these seams and create new momentum.
You mentioned that to spark new ideas, you recommend getting around other people and collaborating, that's one of the ways that ideas will come. So how detrimental is it to business and innovation that more work is done remotely today?
Well, that's a huge problem. And I'm so glad you asked about that, because we've basically been in kind of the death valley of creativity. And I get almost all my best ideas from being someplace else or, just having lunch with interesting people and hearing what's going on, or going to a new city and seeing something that I've never seen before. I was at South by Southwest a few weeks ago, and they had one of these aerial drone displays at night. It was an advertisement for a game with drones. I mean, I've never seen anything like that before. It was like one of the coolest things. And it just exposed me, oh my gosh, that's such a creative marketing idea. Mm-hmm. So like most people, I've been stuck in my office for the last 2 years. And I've had to be intentional about adding serendipity to my life by, reaching out to friends. There's even an app you can use to kind of like meet random business people just to exchange ideas. I even did that for a while. Luckily, things are coming back. I'm starting to travel again. and get to see people and exchange ideas.
Your book mentions several examples when you were early to market. And so this involves finding that seam and the timing around that. With Alcoa and satellite TV, that story I thought was brilliant. Wine in a can, all of these great stories in your book. And then of course, influencer marketing. You discussed that book came out about 2 years before that trend. So yeah. How have you personally learned to improve your timing?
Well, you can't. I mean, timing is timing. The only thing you can do is really improve your chances that if the timing is right, that you're ready to go. It's a matter of research as best you can. It's a matter of talking to people. It's a matter, really, Aaron, of being humble. Too many people become wedded to an idea. And even when people are saying, well, I don't know, it's not going to work. And that's not to say that you shouldn't follow your passion, but too many people are wedded to an idea, even when they start to learn that customers really aren't interested in it. So you've got to really put your ego aside and just let the world tell you if the time is right. So and that's kind of a important soft skill to have, I think, in marketing, is to not be so ferocious with your ideas and your opinions, and that you can kind of admit when things aren't going your way and make a pivot before it's too late.
In stage 3, a sonic boom, you mentioned Steve Racin's research at BuzzSumo, where he found that for something to go viral, it requires a number of influencers posting about it at the same time. He did an analysis and discovered that. And Tim Ferris used that approach when launching the 4-Hour Workweek with those bloggers. How have you personally leveraged a sonic boom approach in your launches?
That's the only thing I do, and it works. The idea is that when you launch something new, you don't need a 1-year plan. You don't need a 6-month plan. You need to put everything you've got into it in a small period of time, like a week or two. And you just want to achieve ubiquity for a couple of days. And that starts this ball rolling. And the way I use it is I'll prepare little gift boxes for influencers, and I'll try to make it personal. I'll try to pay attention to them and put something in there that's special for them. I'll give them a book and I'll autograph the book, and there'll be a handwritten note. And if I do a good job, then the influencers will open up this box and they'll go, wow, Mark really he really pays attention to me, and I'm going to do something nice for him and talk about the book. And if I can get, a number of influencers, I think Steve mentions, 3 to 5 is kind of like a great number. And by the way, I mean, Steve he's no longer with BuzzSumo. He was the founder of BuzzSumo, but I mean, what a brilliant man, and has done many, many great research papers around this area. So all credit to him. So I knew I was doing a good job, Aaron. I did one of these book launches, and someone sent a tweet that said, I've seen Mark Schaefer's new book mentioned 4 times today. I guess I should go buy it. And then once it creates that initial momentum, then, if you've got 5, 10 influencers talking about the book, and they get 50 or 100 people to buy the book, now there's a 50 to 100 people who have that book, and they're going to be talking about it. They're going to be posting about it, because you've got this social proof, this validation from people who they love and trust, that this is a book that they need to they need to look into. And that creates the momentum, and that starts the buzz, that starts the reviews, and gets things going. It works.
I want to switch gears a little bit and talk to you about the future now. So you are known as a futurist. You've been able to see ahead of trends, whether those were e-commerce, like you mentioned at Alcoa, social media, influencer marketing, even content marketing. So what allows you to see ahead?
I don't really know, honestly, but it's something that I discovered about myself when I was in my 30s, and I was in a marketing job, and I could see people just immersed in today. They're worried about the trend that's happening today. And I can see how different trends come together. And I can think through the implications of these trends. And I just have a good track record of envisioning that. I'll give you an example. You mentioned the influence marketing and the influence marketing book. There was this in the early days of influence marketing, there was this company called Clout, Klout, and they were probably the most controversial startup I think I've ever heard of, because they created this algorithm that could see how your content spread on the internet. And if it spread a lot, you would get a high score from 0 to 100. And people hated this. They hated it. They said, this is like high
score. Yeah, I had one too.
You're comparing me to this is like high school, and you can't tell me that how influential I am in my church or my school or my community or my workplace. This is ridiculous. And I realized that influence on the internet gets down to one thing, just one thing. An influencer is a person that can spread content. They can spread ideas. They can spread content to a relevant audience. So if Justin Bieber says, everybody go buy this sweatshirt, and you can see that all these people are reacting to his social media post, you can measure that. You can track that. And what I realized is, everybody hated Clout. Here's what I realized. They were right. They were onto something. And the truth is that basic premise of influence being the ability to spread content is now the foundation of every influence marketing program out there. And so when I had this realization that basically the whole world was wrong, except Joe Fernandez at Clout, it's just like, it was like a runway lit up at O'Hare. I just saw this vision that the whole world of marketing was about to be disrupted because the power was transferring from media companies to individuals like you and me. And you may not trust the news, you may not trust the government, companies, or politicians, but we trust each other. And the people who can create content, build an audience, and build trust are going to change the world. Nobody was talking about it back then. I wrote the book in 2011, came out in 2012, and nobody was even using the word influence marketing back then. But I saw, and I predicted, it came out maybe March of 2012, said in 2 years, this is going to be a mainstream marketing channel. And if you go to Google Trends and put in influence marketing, that's exactly when it tips up, 2014. So I can't really explain other than I pay attention to trends and I think them through.
I heard a recent podcast with you and Matthew Sweezy of Salesforce about the metaverse. Can you tell us a little bit about your RISE crypto-based creator coin and why you decided to get involved in that?
So there's this new idea that there's too much power being centralized in places like Facebook and Apple and Google, and that people need to own their own data and their own privacy and have an option to be rewarded for their input, for their personal information. And so Web3 is based on this decentralized model. That's the theory anyway. I'm not so sure how the world will be decentralized, because big companies that usually pay for this stuff end up centralizing again, but that's the theory. So one of the big ideas are tokenized creator economies. So at the beginning of the web, when I wrote Return on Influence, I talked about we have this power. Web 2 was about, okay, we have this power and now we have an audience. And because we have an audience, we can monetize this. But the money is coming from someplace else. It's coming from ads on YouTube, or it's coming from deal partnerships. We're still not controlling our economy. What Web3 is about, part of it anyway, is this idea that creators with large trusting audiences can create literally their own economy. So I'm on a platform called Rally. It's the leading Web3 tokenized economy platform. And of course, it's centralized, just kind of like I predicted. It could be decentralized, I guess, but I like it being centralized because they give me a lot of services. They help me out. I have improbably my own crypto coin called RISE. I called it RISE to help people rise above the noise. And it's amazing. It really is. It's amazing. I'm building this whole community around this coin. And the most fun for me, Aaron, is the ability to reward people. So after this show, if you have a username on Rally, I will send you coins as a thank you. I've never been able to do that before. People have done so many nice things for me my whole career. And it's like, okay, what do you do? But now I can reward people. They can use those tokens to get all kinds of interesting new benefits. I've got a Web3 learning community where you can learn about writing, podcasting, speaking, building a personal brand. Web3. People can use my tokens to be in the studio audience of my podcast. People can use tokens to have lunch with me when I'm at a big event like South by Southwest. So it's just incredible. It's so much fun. And for the first time in my life, I'm beginning to feel like I have a community. I've always had an audience, but that's different than a community. And I think community is the ultimate marketing. If you have a community, you don't need advertising, you don't need SEO. You've got a group of people who love you, support you, and will buy from you. So this is, to me, it's a grand experiment. It's pushing myself to be relevant in this new area. And by the way, anybody who's listening, if you want some of my coins, just send me an email. It's mark.schaefer@businessesgrow.com. Just let me know and I'll just give you some coins so that you can become part of the learning community.
Thank you for that offer. In advance of this interview, I asked those in my LinkedIn community to submit their questions. And here's what some of them wanted to know. James Gilbert asked, what do you believe will be the next marketing rebellion?
In my book, in my Marketing Rebellion book, there's a little history lesson that talks about the 3 rebellions. It's a consumer rebellion against lies, against secrets, and against control. And at the end, I think about what would be the 4th one. And it might have something to do with companies being able to know so much about us, even on a genetic level. And the rebellion might be against, will have something to do maybe with privacy and us owning our own information. Perhaps that's what Web3 is about, right? I mean, if Web3 really becomes adopted, Facebook ads will die. Google ads will die. That's why Google's creating their own metaverse, because Web2, they see over time, could be going away. If you have a wallet, a digital wallet that has all your personal information in it, and you only open that wallet and let people in if they give you something in return, that's, today it's out there and people are collecting information about you and it's kind of out of your control. So, I mean, maybe I was right at the end of my book, because if Web3 is successful, that would probably be the fourth rebellion.
And what's next for Mark Schaefer? Is there anything you're working on right now?
Yeah, there's a couple things I'm working on. I think there is an immense potential with NFTs. And when I say NFT, a lot of people, what comes to mind is some, little piece of art or something. And look, 98% of the NFTs out there are really kind of hype and crap right now. But there's a very compelling business case where you can create an NFT that is a contract. So if you own this NFT, it's like a membership club, and you get access to, my content, my podcast, my events. Maybe you get behind the scenes, blah, blah, blah. And so my goal is to create some true value-based NFT for my community by the end of this year. There's lots of different ways I could go. But I want to do that just as a learning exercise, so I can be immersed in this and figure out how all this stuff works. That's a big focus for me. Another big focus, again, is exploring this idea of the tokenized economy. We had an issue last week where there was like a big problem in my community. There was this big disappointment, and everybody came together. It like brought us together. And it was for the first time in my whole career, I thought, this is more about we than me. I always think, I'm the blogger, I'm the guy with a podcast. Everybody's out there listening. But I really felt like there was a we. It was really powerful. And so I want to keep going down that path. I have this event called the Uprising. It's a small marketing retreat in America. Next year, I'm going to also have one in Europe for the first time. And that's exciting. And I'll also be working on a new book this year.
Well, we're definitely looking forward to that. Thank you. I just have one final question for you. I know you met Gayle, but do you think you'll ever get to meet Oprah?
Oh, it's not that important to me. I mean, I used it sort of as a literary vehicle in the book to tell a story. I mean, I admire Oprah. I would be starstruck if I ever got to meet her. But that's not really a goal. That's really not me. I like just shining the light on other people, helping other people. That's really what is my fuel at this point in my career. I'm a blue collar sort of creator. I don't aspire to be in Hollywood like Tim Ferris, but yeah, if I met Oprah someday, Oprah, if you're listening, my door is open to you.
Well, Mark, I want to thank you. I really enjoy your podcast and books. I just want to end by, thank you for joining me today, and also for continuing to inspire us. Your courage in stepping out, trying new things, and bringing that back to us has been so helpful.
Well, thanks, Aaron, and thanks for being so well prepared today. Let me tell you, that is a very special experience to have an interviewer that's as prepared as you. So thank you for the work that you put into this.